it's time to kick it off. So we have Juha Tarkkanen here from Vainu Enterprise Account Executive, who's going to talk with me today about prospecting and how prospecting is hard, but it doesn't really have to be hard. And Juha, can you talk a bit about what you do at Vainu at the moment?
Yeah, and first of all, hi everyone, and thanks, Amer, for having me. The Yeah, as you said, I work at the enterprise team at the moment in Vainu, but before that, I work with the mid and large sector in sales. And before, at first, when I was in Vainu, I was in the sales development representative, and basically calling our prospects and setting up the meetings for account executives. So that's my brief introduction in Vainu. But question to you, Amer, back in your day when you were doing prospecting, how was your daily activities going on with the prospecting?
Yeah, back in the day, I think the principles are very relevant even today. So I usually started everything from my calendar. So I marked specific time slots for the week when I was researching new target accounts, basically doing prospecting. So I would usually have a goal like, well, if I need to hit quota, I need these many meetings, which means I need these many companies to call. So I had a pretty strict routine on starting with the prospecting, because in my view, I always thought that if I have enough prospects in my sort of first pipeline stage, then it's all about repetition, and the sort of the baseline is always the starting point is always with having enough companies and having sort of good reasons to reach out to them. So making sure that they are part of our ICP, and making sure that the timing is right for them. And that's how you start. And then I usually had like certain time slots for when I did my reach outs. So usually, well, back then I used mostly the phone. These days, I might explore contacting through LinkedIn more. And then, I just had a specific routine: prospecting time slots, booking time slots, and then the rest of the time was reserved for meetings. And then I had specific time slots when I was creating the sort of proposals and following up with the company. So it was very much structured in the calendar. You also mentioned that you wanted to get the companies in the CRM. So like you're using three tools basically. You're using LinkedIn, you're using Vainu, you're using HubSpot as a CRM. So do you sort of feel overwhelmed with the tools, or how do you sort of make it easier for yourself that you don't need to use three tools? Are there some automations or anything like that?
That could be that people can hear that it's overwhelming using three tools. But when looking the time, spending time in Vainu, spending time on LinkedIn, spending time on HubSpot, they are not equally divided. HubSpot is by far the most used tool in my daily activities, because the leads that I receive from Vainu, they are coming to HubSpot. So to set them in the order, HubSpot is the by far most used tool in my daily activities. Second one is LinkedIn. Just if I get the companies that I want to contact, then I usually spend time on LinkedIn to find the right person, or creating a right message if I don't have the phone number. And the third one is Vainu, but it's mostly on visiting purposes, or just some little fine tuning on those searches if they are not that correct at the time. So Vainu is by far the least used tool because the tasks are automated to HubSpot, and then every day I received HubSpot tasks about what to do, where to contact, what could be good company to contact. Again, a question back to you, Amer. You mentioned about you really had really structured schedule using when you were doing prospecting, but did you have any of these your prospecting activities, any of this automated, or was it just mainly using every time logging in the Vainu and then creating a target list from there and scrolling around LinkedIn? How was it?
Well, yes, I'd say that during the recent years, the workflow has definitely changed. And one of the sort of main, I think, benefits these days is that you can get company data directly in a sort of main tool you use. And obviously, sort of the main tool, the CRM was probably the least used tool back then. But now I think it's sort of changed. So that as a salesperson, I want to be able to, have one view of my target account and see all the relevant information there. And when I mean relevant, I mean like the things that help me as a salesperson in my job. And when you think about sort of maybe why salespeople don't like to use their CRMs, it might be because the information there isn't relevant. I mean, is it relevant to have a postal address like as one of the sort of first things a salesperson sees on a company view in the CRM, or would it be more beneficial to see location, like sort of location that's relevant to you? I mean, if I'm selling internationally, I probably would like to see the country. That's enough,
yeah,
not the street
address.
Enough.
Yeah.
But if I would be visiting these companies on a daily basis, like driving on the car, going to places, then the address is more relevant at that point.
But still, I would agree that the address is quite irrelevant. I would still use Google Maps and find the company from there and drive to their place. But as said, the country is the biggest thing on those where the company is located, and also the CRM. It helps if there's relevant data. Let's say that Vainu detects new SaaS company that has revenue over 1 million, and that has grown, let's say 20% over the last year. That is very relevant company in our mind. And when you check the company's data, it's very quickly that can be checked from Vainu, from HubSpot, excuse me, that is the company Finnish? Let's say yes. Their revenue is now over 1 million. Their profit is still quite lacking, and it works in SaaS and fintech sector. And what's their digitality and what's their CRM status is. And after that, those are the data I need to deep dive more in what the company is doing, and usually that happens basically checking their website or their LinkedIn page. That's about it. And that the first step to getting the company, defining new company, saving time on that end, that is huge, because then you can from right from there to start working with the company and start contacting their top level and have a meeting with them if they're interested about buying our services, for instance.
We've discussed yes, it's a struggle to use different tools, or it's a struggle if you don't have tools. But how would you comment about the sort of the process that you're working with now? Is the process you use for prospecting now, would you say it's well defined, or would you say it's like sort of ad hoc?
I would say it's more well defined than in around 1 year ago, the process at the moment. And I would like to add that if the company doesn't know their own ICP, it's very, very difficult salespeople to do their prospecting. And that was also one thing that if let's say I don't receive enough automated leads, then usually I go back and check the companies that have become Vainu's customers. And the main thing I check from these companies is their Vainu custom industry. So let's say that they're accounting companies, and how did they use, or why did they purchase Vainu? And after those two questions, finding their Vainu custom industry and why did they purchase Vainu, it can be then multiplied to finding all the other companies, basically their competitors, and contact them. Then of course it doesn't mean that if your competitor is using Vainu, you should also use Vainu, but it also helps that you know some relevant use case to that industry. Let's say we discussed this earlier about accounting companies. It's very relevant to know that what kind of accounting softwares the companies are using. And let's say that the company is using Accounter or NetVisor softwares, and they are offering their own solutions to those companies. That could be immediately found thousands of companies that are using your competitors' softwares.
So how do you find more companies that are good fit?
Well, there's kind of two sides on this topic. I'll answer your question first. That if finding a good company and you want to multiply that to find 10, 20 similar companies, then usually, luckily we have the Vainu custom industry that helps very much to find companies from the same industries rather than the standard industry classification code, because that is, especially most of our ICP are more in the tech side of companies or B2B sector. So it helps a lot to find that if the company is working on fintech or working on IT consulting, or what kind of consulting the company is working on. So that's first thing, and then multiplying that search based on revenue, based on revenue growth, based on recent changes, top level changes, tracking data of the company. Have they purchased or acquired another companies? Are they recruiting actively? And if they're recruiting, what kind of persons they are recruiting? And those can be quickly narrowed down as a one search, and right away you can find 10, 50 new fresh companies, fresh new leads. But yeah, I agree that there is still that, let's say I find 50 new companies and I'll mass export them to our CRM. There's still chance that not everyone is good fit. But narrowing the search, tuning the search, finding the reason of why these 15 companies are similar helps to start the initial conversation with the company. And this leads to the second part of about the sales prospecting, is that after we launched the workflow triggers from Vainu straight to HubSpot, that was directly visible in the SDR's results. For instance, when I moved to the account executive, before I was, as said, sales development representative, and we used Google Sheets. So every new lead came to this Google Sheet page about top level, let's say new head of sales, or this company has acquired this company, or this company has started using this technology. But there was still the manual process. Just check that if the company is good, and then I need to go back to the CRM. So that let's say there's 50 new leads every day. That's 50 times I was moving back from Google Sheets back to the CRM, and that took time. So after we launched the workflow triggers, Felix, who did wonderful job as a SDR, he had over. I think Mikko posted this in LinkedIn. I don't know. Do you remember the correct result? But at least over 100. I think it was 120 in over a month.
Might have been more than that even.
Yeah, I think 110, 20, 130 in 1 month. And those, at least half of them were workflow triggers straight to the CRM. Because if the lead is bad, then you just can close the task and move on to the next one. But there is no any going through Google Sheet, going back to the HubSpot phases, just checking the HubSpot. If the lead is good, yes, contact. If not, close the task and move on.
Okay, so what we had was basically we had clearly defined our ICP, and well, we defined it in Vainu. We used workflow triggers to get all those companies into HubSpot. So basically, what the SDR previously used a Google Sheet with a list of good prospects, but now every new prospect which matches our ICP, which is a good fit for us, appears directly in our CRM for the SDR to just take it from there.
And that's the biggest thing, that they can spend their time on CRM. New lead of a company that we have contacted, let's say 2 years ago, they can check straight from the topics below the new task that hey, what we have discussed previously, and contact a potential prospect that hey, we called you 2 years ago, and now it seems that you have grown a lot. Is it time to meet and get acquainted with? And that is the biggest thing that saves time. Everything is founded in one page or one software.
Well, then my question actually is that if you sort of automate prospecting into the CRM, what does that mean to the sort of the time spent on prospecting? Is that basically minimized, or does it go to zero?
Well, that is I get this question a lot, and that is that at first you gotta spend time to tune the searches, but that is 2-3 hours job, and then see the results. Usually after 2 hours, you will see that okay, these are the initial results based on these searches. Are there goods? If yes, let's continue on those, and after 2 weeks you can come back and do some fine tuning that okay, now I'm getting too much results, that I don't have time to contact every company, and then the lead is getting colder. So that's why I need to fine tune these searches. So I think that the time to automate the task, to automate the prospecting, can be done within 5 hours. Let's say 2 hours at first and 3 hours for the next following 12 months.
Maybe salespeople shouldn't be doing a lot of manual prospecting. Maybe the whole thing should be automated. If a company knows their ICP, and you can clearly define the ICP that we want these types of companies, let's say size, location, industry. They might be a company that might be recruiting right now, or companies that use a certain piece of software, like let's say Drift on their website. And then when you have the ICP criteria defined, you just automate it. You automate it into a CRM, which means that let the machine do the work for you, and let the salespeople use the CRM where they get all the relevant companies and sort of work from there.
Agreed. I think when people say prospecting is hard, it is based on that the ICP is not defined, that what it is, and if it has been defined, it's way too big, and then the results, you get too much results and you get overwhelmed with the leads. You don't have time to check up all the leads. You get 40, 50, 100 new leads every day, and then you get tired of just manually clicking them away from your CRM. And that's the biggest thing of prospecting, in my mind, that people get too many leads based on that the ICP is not well defined.
Why is it important to define the ICP? Why can't I just trust my gut feeling as a salesperson that these are the types of companies that I like working with?
Well, that is the problem is then that you get, let's say use Vainu, use LinkedIn. The search criteria is too big, so the leads based on the search criteria is too many to you to handle. And then even though there are the ICP customers that are very good for you, but when you're used to receiving 60 and you should receive 10, when you're used to receive 60 new leads every day, you get tired, you get exhausted, you get overwhelmed about the data, about too much data, too much companies, too many leads, and then you don't even check if the company is good. You are just already decided that these 60 companies, I don't have time. I just need to click them away from my table and move on and hope that next day I would receive better leads and a smaller amount of the leads. And I think that's the biggest thing, that narrowing the ICP helps you with the prospecting, helps you receiving better leads. And if the ICP is too narrow, it can always be widened a little bit, opening up a little bit and receiving a little bit more leads, and starting from small to big rather than big to small. I think that's the better way to do it, or start automating task and prospecting.
Let's say you didn't have any automation. What would you do on a daily basis?
I would use a lot of time on different software, different services to find new companies, and I think my day would consist much more about prospecting if I wouldn't have any automation behind it, because then I would just scroll around on LinkedIn, just check on my LinkedIn feed, and if there's new company that I haven't recognized, I would check what the company is doing, who are the top level, and then it's basically just same as reading news, that you're reading news but you're not paying attention on it. So same thing on LinkedIn, or if you're using Vainu without any automation, every time you come back, look at your target lists and start from there, and start memorizing what have you done previously. Did I have contacted this company or not? Is this company on my CRM or not? And then just spending more time on irrelevant topics, I think it would just wear you down, or wear me down.
If you want to give sort of tips to let's say salespeople, team leads, and sales directors when it comes to prospecting, what are your top tips?
My biggest advice, or in my ideal world, I would have that the sales director would set up the leads, would automate the task for their sales, for his or her salespeople. Let's say that I think the best way to use, for instance, Vainu, is that one person is using Vainu, automating the workflow triggers to their CRM and dividing them to the people accordingly. And I think that's the best way for sales directors, just automating prospecting. But as said before, that defining the ICP helps a lot, because then your salespeople wouldn't get overwhelmed about the amount of data they would receive. It is more beneficial that one person is in charge of the leads, finding the prospects, as for instance, team leads, creating new lists, creating new companies, new accounting firms that are relevant to them, and the team lead would then push them to their own CRM and said, hey, I created now 50 new leads, you can go check from my accounts and pick from there if you want. And I think that is a very good morning start on Monday, that team lead saying that, hey, I have 50 new fresh lead on based on these criteria. Just check on LinkedIn the right person you should contact if the company is completely new.
Okay, so what you're saying is that it would be better if the sort of people who run the sales teams, run the sales organization, they provide the prospects, the target accounts to the salespeople, so that the salespeople can focus on the actual sales work and not prospecting.
Exactly. That I would, in my ideal world, that the sales directors, team leads would find new fresh leads, automate tasks, let's say from Vainu or whatever software that can provide new company data. But the sales account executives, account managers, SDRs, they would use, rather than having, they would spend time on prospecting, they would use LinkedIn to find the right person. And I think that would be the most ideal setup for a company that is actively doing new business sales.
Okay, so a company must have like a clearly defined ICP, and then provide the target accounts to the salespeople. And when the salespeople think about reaching out via phone, finding the person, finding the phone number or email address or LinkedIn profile, you would suggest that they use a company database to find the companies, and then when you know which company you're targeting, you find the people from LinkedIn.
Yeah, and to give more information is that sales directors and team leads that should provide prospects, should provide new leads. It doesn't take time to set up the automation workflows from Vainu, for instance. And then it is basically just managing your team and fine tuning the results they get from Vainu, for instance. So that is my ideal workflow. That first of all, getting the company, finding the right companies based on ICP, then getting the leads from there, automated to their CRM, to salespeople. Then salespeople jump to the LinkedIn, find the person, find the contact, and then start creating a pipeline.
Are there situations where you have a very automated process here, which saves a lot of time and sort of gives the right direction to the company because you've defined the ICP well? Are there situations that you faced where the salespeople might not agree that these are the right criteria? They might say that, I can't work with these companies. Have you seen these types of situations, and have there been any solutions in your mind for these?
Most often, they are not the salespeople that are not agreeing with the idea, because for them this would be the most optimal, that they would get leads based on the searches done by sales director or team lead. But usually, people are still thinking about that everyone should do their own prospecting and find their leads. And then that, when talking about Vainu, purchasing Vainu, many sales directors think about that every sales people should have license in Vainu. And I'm always saying that it's more cost effective to have only 1 or 2 licenses in Vainu and automating the workflow triggers to the CRM to your salespeople. So then there's kind of mismatch that usually it's based on that the sales director or the team leads, they don't know their ICP that well. They rely on their salespeople finding only good prospects and then riding with that. So that's why that's the biggest difficulty. If the company or the top level people doesn't know their ICP, then salespeople, then they don't want to automate the processes and providing leads to salespeople.
Since the base of prospecting is defining your ICP and really embracing it, and you meet with a lot of companies, do you feel that the ICP is defined in most companies, or the opposite?
I think it's getting better and better. The people are defining their ICP better, and if they don't have any like specific criteria that they should use this technology, but still they know that the company who has acquired another company is very relevant and makes them ICP company. So those are that people are looking in and looking in their data, that what kind of customers are the best ones, why the customers have purchased them, why the customers are using their services, and based on that data, the ICP is more well defined on those companies. And as to answer your question, is getting better and better. But oh boy, those meetings are tough when people. I'm asking like, who is your most ideal customer? Who would you like to sell that? And the answer is that I think all of the let's say Nordic customers are the best ones. Everyone who has revenue over 1 million, and still there are hundreds of thousands of those companies, and then it's very hard to narrow from there anywhere closer to the ideal number.
You said that it's improving. A lot of companies are defining the ICP more and more, but are they really embracing it? Are they using it in their? Are the salespeople and sales management, marketing, are they all aligned with the same goal, or is it just like a slide and then the salespeople are doing their own thing?
That can be the case, that is the slide, and that the top level have decided this is our ICP, but then the salespeople are running around focusing on companies that are clearly not their ICP. And also this comes back to the prospecting and automating the tasks, is that companies who are struggling to find new companies who think prospecting is hard, is that they should automate the prospecting to their salespeople based on their own defined ICP, and not letting the salespeople running around and trying a little bit about there and here, and spending time on their work days, something that should not be spent.
How about the ICP criteria, like in general? When you mentioned that some companies ICP criteria might be, we want all Nordic companies, which is millions of companies. And what's the benefit of narrowing it down from the millions of companies? Why should you have a narrower ICP? Why can't it just be, we want all Nordic companies?
Well, imagine you have millions of Nordic companies. It's very you pick one of the million companies and say this is our ICP company. It's very, very hard to be excited about this company, since you know that there is 999,000 of more of these exact same companies, even though they are not exact same. But when ruling it or narrowing it down for smaller segment, and you get 500 companies within the Nordics, you will do your due diligence of the company better, go deeper with the company, and also you know that these criteria makes the company on a sense that they should be our customer. And if you get too few of the results, it's easier to widen the scope. Let's say that the revenue can be 800,000 rather than 1 million, and again getting more results, and that helps. Rather than starting with the 1 million, it's better to start with 500.
What are the sort of ICP definition criteria a company might use? We all know that's the golden triangle, like location, size, industry, and what else? Like it's still like it doesn't narrow the amount of companies that much. I mean, there's still a lot of potential to do.
I think that's the good setup, that you've defined the size, the industry, and the location. But on top of that, does it matter what kind of technology the company is using? If yes, then what? There's multiple different things you can, based on number of cars owned, number of top level changes the company has had within the past year, number of companies they have acquired, number of recruitments they have going on. Like, that helps to narrowing down that, let's say you're your management consulting company, and the company, you're interested of companies that there has been, let's say, over 4 different new persons in the top level. That is very relevant to know that something must be going on with the top level management, and then it helps you to contact their, let's say, current CEO and say, hey, we noticed that you have 4 new C-level employees. Do you think any of that we would love to discuss and hear your thoughts, and maybe provide our own background experience on this topic?
It's usually pretty much the static truths about a company, like industry size, location. You talked a lot about these sort of dynamic things, like how many are they recruiting people? Like, they might be recruiting now, they might not be recruiting after 6 months. A merger is something that happens quite rarely, and if they implement something new, they implement a new piece of technology. Let's say they take an applicant tracking system. Do you feel that the companies you meet with are aware of the importance of these sort of changes that happen, and how they could be used in ICP definition?
That is also that it's mostly start with the standard, the static triangle, as you said. But then when the conversation going on, they all individually realize that actually it would help, it would be beneficial to know what's their applicant tracking system is, and this narrows their ICP down. And usually we work with the customers, helping them narrowing their ICP down, and if you can narrow it good enough or getting it small enough, that helps them. But I want to grab in the industry about industry thing. It's, since we launched the Vainu customer industry, this is one thing that helps very, very much narrowing the company based on static results. So let's say that you're interested about accounting companies. Yes, there is the standard industry classification for that, but then it helps that is the company doing anything with accounting and software, or are they providing accounting, financial services, and software services in all those 3 things? And just based on Vainu custom industry, you can narrow your ICP down way more than based on the normal industry. And this is one thing that we don't need to talk about that much. If there is no dynamic changes within the within your prospects that are interesting, you don't need to focus on those. Focusing on Vainu custom industry and finding SaaS and companies that are doing SaaS and fintech and edtech rather than SaaS and information technology. And that's one thing that helps narrowing down the ICP.
So you use the sort of existing triangle, but you try to make the criteria in the triangle more useful.
Exactly. That is the one thing that we ask, that, hey, can you give us 4, 5 year relevant customers, and just check their company card from Vainu and say, what do you think about these custom industries? What are the most relevant of these customers based on your own opinion, and then do searches based on those Vainu custom industries and tuning it in. And that's very quick and very easy to do, and also it creates a good wow effect to the customer.
Yeah, the classic example of there's a company that officially is doing manufacturing, But if you use a sort of different method to define the industry, then you can clearly see that there might be a 3D printing company.
Yeah.
And we can always say which one is more beneficial to a salesperson. The fact that the company's industry is manufacturing, or that they're doing 3D printing, and maybe something else as well.
Exactly.
If you could give some tips to our audience about, let's say, prioritization and self-discipline, which are very important in sales work, what kind of tips would you give?
Automating as much as possible. That helps. That keeps you motivated, and then you have more time. You have larger base on your pipeline, and of course, it narrows when you go to the end of the pipeline. And also making sure that the data on CRM is on point, because then salespeople or the employees using CRM would see more value on CRM when the data is on point, and when it's not completely mess, they can see that why should they use CRM, and that helps a lot. Amer, a quick question: have you seen that the content, or not content, but the information that salespeople are now pushing to HubSpot is getting more better than before the time we don't have that much data on HubSpot, on our CRM?
Let's think of a situation where you have defined the ICP, you've automated the prospecting so that you get new companies into the CRM whenever they match your ICP criteria, and obviously you've exported the baseline of the sort of companies that currently match our ICP to your CRM. Your salespeople operate in the CRM. How to make sure that that the information doesn't get stale, that everything gets updated. Well, that's like a very crucial point to remember, that you just can't do it once. You have to keep updating the data. You've automated everything to the CRM. Make sure to keep it updated automatically as well. The addresses change. The financial figures change. And when all of this information is useful to the salesperson, because the salesperson always needs to be up to date on things happening in their target accounts. So that's probably the last thing to note.
I agree.
Okay, I think that's about wraps. I think this wraps up our first ever Vainu Live. I want to thank you, Juha, very much for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we'll keep having these live events every 2 weeks on Tuesdays, usually at 10:30 CET. And stay tuned for more stuff, more material, and more experts on various topics.